What if the most advanced construction techniques in history weren't invented recently? What if ancient civilizations possessed engineering knowledge that modern experts still can't fully explain? The conventional story says ancient people used primitive tools, simple chisels, basic hammers, crude methods that took decades or centuries to build monuments. But scattered across the globe are structures that challenge that narrative completely. Temples carved entirely from single pieces of rock, not built with blocks, not assembled from pieces, carved downward from solid stone. The engineering required is staggering. One mistake and the entire structure is ruined. No room for error. No way to add material if you remove too much. These aren't small shrines. These are massive architectural complexes. Some carved from mountains, others excavated from cliffsides, all requiring precision that seems impossible with primitive technology. And here's the question nobody wants to address directly: how did they do it? Modern engineers struggle to explain the methods, the tools required, the organizational systems needed, the mathematical knowledge demonstrated. Mainstream archaeology offers explanations. Thousands of workers, decades of labor, trial and error over generations. But examine the precision, and those explanations start looking thin. The perfectly level surfaces, the intricate carvings, the structural calculations that prevent collapse. This required advanced knowledge, sophisticated planning, engineering expertise that supposedly didn't exist. Today, we're investigating 10 temples carved from single rocks, monolithic structures that defy conventional explanations of ancient capabilities. Each one represents an engineering achievement that challenges what we think we know about the past. The evidence is carved in stone, literally, impossible to dismiss or explain away. Fair warning: what you're about to see contradicts the accepted timeline of human technological development. These structures suggest ancient civilizations possessed knowledge that was somehow lost, knowledge that modern engineers respect but can't fully explain. 10 temples, 10 engineering mysteries, 10 pieces of evidence that human history is more advanced than textbooks suggest. The stone doesn't lie. The precision is measurable. The achievement is undeniable. Let's examine what ancient engineers accomplished and why it matters that we still don't fully understand how they did it. Number 1 takes us to India, to a structure that modern engineers call impossible given the supposed technology available when it was built. The Kailasa Temple at Ellora, Cave 16 in the Ellora complex. This isn't a temple built from blocks. This is a temple carved downward from a single piece of solid rock. 8th century AD, the Rashtrakuta dynasty controls the region. King Krishna I orders construction of a temple dedicated to Lord Shiva. But this won't be a traditional building. This will be excavated from living rock. The builders started at the top of a cliff. They carved downward, removing an estimated 400,000 tons of rock. What remains is a complete temple complex. Freestanding structures carved from the surrounding stone but never separated from it. The main temple towers 100 feet high, carved with intricate details, pillars, courtyards, sculptures, all from one continuous piece of rock. The precision is extraordinary. Walls are perfectly vertical, surfaces precisely level, structural elements calculated to prevent collapse, despite removing massive amounts of supporting material. Here's what makes this remarkable. One mistake ruins everything. Remove too much stone in the wrong place, and the entire structure collapses. There's no way to add material back, no way to repair structural errors. Every cut must be perfect the first time. Modern archaeologists estimate it took over a century to complete. Generations of workers, thousands of laborers, working with basic hand tools, supposedly. But engineers who study the site raise questions. The mathematical precision required, the structural calculations, the organizational complexity. This required advanced planning, detailed architectural drawings, understanding of stress, load distribution, and material properties. The builders had to visualize the finished structure before making the first cut, plan every detail, calculate every structural element, then execute perfectly. For over a century, without modern tools, without computer modeling, without engineering software. The temple includes elaborate carvings, sculptures of deities, mythological scenes, decorative patterns, all carved into walls and ceilings. Some carvings are in locations where workers would have had difficulty accessing: overhead surfaces, narrow passages, confined spaces. The level of detail suggests master craftsmen, not simple laborers, artists who understood proportion, perspective, and composition. And they accomplished this while removing hundreds of thousands of tons of rock, while maintaining structural integrity, while creating a functioning temple complex. The Kailasa Temple stands today, 13 centuries after completion, structurally sound, precisely carved, functionally intact. Modern engineers respect what was accomplished, but many admit they couldn't replicate it with certainty, even with modern equipment. The knowledge demonstrated suggests capabilities beyond what mainstream history attributes to 8th century Indian civilization. Advanced mathematics, sophisticated engineering, organizational systems complex enough to coordinate generations of work. This wasn't primitive construction. This was advanced architecture, executed in one of the most difficult ways possible. And it's just the first example. Number 2 gets even more mysterious. Number 2 remains partially hidden in the Ethiopian highlands, carved from volcanic rock in a region that's isolated even today. The rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, 11 medieval churches carved from solid stone. 12th and 13th centuries. King Lalibela rules the Zagwe dynasty. Christian Ethiopia is isolated from other Christian regions by Islamic expansion. Lalibela decides to create a new Jerusalem, a pilgrimage site carved entirely from the living rock of the mountains. But these aren't simple carved caves. These are complete churches, freestanding structures excavated from solid volcanic rock. The most famous is the Church of St. George, Biete Georgis in the local language. Picture this. Workers started with flat bedrock. They carved a massive pit, 40 feet deep, creating a cross-shaped excavation. In the center of that pit stands the church, carved from the remaining rock, a perfect Greek cross when viewed from above. The church is 40 feet tall, carved downward from solid rock, completely detached from the surrounding stone except at the base. The roof is level with the original ground surface, decorated with a carved cross, accessible by walking across the surrounding bedrock. The walls are carved with windows, doors, interior spaces, all excavated from continuous stone. Inside, the church has pillars, arches, decorative elements, carved from the same stone as the structure itself. Here's what makes this extraordinary: the precision required. The walls are vertical, corners are square, measurements are consistent. This was carved with hand tools, 13th century technology. No machinery, no power tools, just chisels, hammers, and human labor. But examine the engineering, the structural calculations necessary to prevent collapse while removing so much material, the organizational planning required, the coordination of workers, the maintenance of precise measurements while carving downward through solid rock. The Church of St. George is just one of 11 churches. The entire complex represents decades of continuous carving. Some churches are connected by tunnels, underground passages carved through solid rock, navigation routes for pilgrims. The tunnels show the same precision as the churches: calculated dimensions, proper drainage, structural integrity. Local tradition claims the churches were built in 24 years, that King Lalibela had divine assistance, that angels helped with the work. Mainstream historians consider this legendary exaggeration, suggest the construction took much longer, perhaps a century or more. But even a century seems ambitious given the amount of stone removed, the precision maintained, the complexity achieved. Modern estimates calculate over 100,000 cubic meters of rock were excavated, all removed by hand, all while maintaining structural integrity. The churches remain active today, still used for worship, still structurally sound after 8 centuries. UNESCO declared them a World Heritage Site, recognize them as extraordinary engineering achievements. But questions remain. How did 13th century Ethiopian craftsmen achieve this precision? What knowledge systems did they possess? How did they calculate structural loads? How did they maintain measurements while carving downward through solid volcanic rock? The churches exist. The precision is measurable. The engineering is undeniable. But the methods remain partially mysterious. Knowledge that was clearly possessed, but inadequately documented. Number 3 takes us back to India, to a cave temple complex that predates the Kailasa temple by centuries. The Ajanta Caves. 30 rock-cut Buddhist cave monuments carved into a horseshoe-shaped cliff. 2nd century BC to 6th century AD. Multiple dynasties, multiple periods of construction spanning 800 years. These aren't natural caves. These are carved temples, monasteries, prayer halls, all excavated from solid basalt rock. The earliest caves date to the 2nd century BC, the Satavahana dynasty, early Buddhist period in India. Later caves were added during the Vakataka dynasty. 5th and 6th centuries AD, different styles, different purposes, but all share one characteristic. They're carved directly from living rock, excavated into the cliff face. Some caves are simple: monastery cells, living quarters, storage areas, functional spaces. Others are elaborate: prayer halls with massive pillars, intricate carvings, painted murals covering walls and ceilings. Cave 26 contains a prayer hall 70 feet long. Carved pillars support the ceiling. A massive Buddha sculpture sits at the rear. The ceiling is carved with geometric patterns, the walls covered with narrative scenes from Buddhist texts. And all of this is carved from continuous rock, not assembled, not built. Carved from the mountain itself. The paintings that cover many caves are remarkable. Frescoes depicting Buddhist stories. Detailed scenes with hundreds of figures. The paintings survived because the caves protected them. But the engineering that created those caves is what matters here. Creating interior spaces in solid rock requires precision. Remove too much material and the ceiling collapses. Remove too little and the space is unusable. The builders had to calculate how much rock to leave for structural support, had to understand material properties, stress distribution, load bearing. Cave 1 contains pillars carved with such precision that they appear to be separate structures, but they're continuous with the ceiling and floor. Each pillar is decorated with elaborate carvings, floral patterns, geometric designs, all carved from solid rock. The level of detail suggests master craftsmen, artists who understood proportion and composition, engineers who understood structure and stability. And this was accomplished over 800 years. Multiple generations, different rulers, different Buddhist sects, but the engineering knowledge was maintained. The skills were passed down. The precision was consistent across centuries. Modern archaeologists study these caves to understand ancient construction techniques, the tools used, the methods employed, but many aspects remain unclear. How did workers light the interiors while carving? How did they remove massive amounts of rock from deep inside the mountain? How did they maintain ventilation in confined spaces? How did they coordinate work across multiple caves simultaneously? The Ajanta Caves demonstrate sustained engineering knowledge over centuries. Consistent precision, despite changing dynasties and purposes. This suggests institutional knowledge, teaching systems, master craftsmen training apprentices across generations, not primitive trial and error, sophisticated technical knowledge maintained and transmitted systematically. The caves exist as proof. The engineering is measurable. The achievement spans 8 centuries of continuous work. Number 4 brings us to the ancient Nabatean city, hidden in the Jordanian desert, known worldwide, but rarely understood. Petra, the rock-cut capital of the Nabatean kingdom. Most people recognize the treasury, Al-Khazne, the massive facade carved into rose-colored sandstone cliffs. But Petra contains hundreds of rock-cut structures, tombs, temples, houses, public buildings, all carved directly from stone cliffs. 4th century BC to 1st century AD, the Nabateans controlled crucial trade routes. Incense, spices, silk, all passed through their territory. They built their capital in a naturally defensible location, a valley surrounded by towering sandstone cliffs. But they didn't just occupy natural caves. They created architecture by removing stone. The treasury facade stands over 125 feet tall, carved with elaborate classical details, columns, pediments, sculptures. This wasn't carved from blocks. This was carved from the cliff face. The builders removed everything that wasn't the desired structure. The precision is remarkable. The columns are perfectly proportional. The decorative elements are mathematically placed. The facade is symmetrical. This required accurate measurement over a 100-foot vertical span, consistent proportions maintained while working from scaffolding or ropes. Behind the facade is a large interior chamber, 45 feet square, carved from solid rock. The chamber has a flat floor, vertical walls, a carved ceiling, all excavated from continuous stone. But the treasury is just one structure. The monastery ad-Dir is even larger, over 160 feet wide, carved high in the cliffs. Petra contains over 800 carved structures, facades, tombs, water channels, all carved from sandstone. The Nabateans were master hydraulic engineers. They carved elaborate water management systems into the rock, channels, cisterns, pipes, all carved to support ceramic pipes, managing water in a desert environment. These systems show sophisticated understanding of water pressure, gravity flow, storage requirements. The carved architecture shows understanding of structural properties. Sandstone is relatively soft, easy to carve, but also prone to weathering. The Nabateans carved in ways that minimized erosion, protected surfaces, created drainage systems that directed water away from structures. This required understanding of geology, material properties, long-term weathering patterns. The city's layout shows urban planning, organization, infrastructure systems integrated with carved architecture. When Rome annexed the region in 106 AD, Petra's importance declined. Trade routes shifted. The city was gradually abandoned. By the 7th century, it was largely forgotten, known only to local Bedouin tribes. Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt rediscovered it for the Western world in 1812. What he found was a complete rock-cut city, still standing, still intact, carved from multicolored sandstone cliffs. Modern engineers study Petra to understand Nabatean construction techniques, the tools they used, the methods they employed. The precision suggests advanced mathematical knowledge, understanding of proportion, symmetry, and structural engineering. The scale suggests sophisticated organization, coordinated labor, long-term planning sustained across generations. The Nabateans left limited written records. Much of their knowledge died with their civilization, but the stone remains. The carved structures stand as proof of capabilities that mainstream history barely acknowledges. Advanced engineering, sophisticated mathematics, urban planning integrated with natural landscape, all accomplished by a civilization known primarily as desert traders. The evidence suggests they were much more than that. They were engineers and architects who literally shaped mountains into cities. Number 5 takes us to Egypt, but not to the pyramids, to temples carved from cliffs during the New Kingdom period. Abu Simbel, 2 massive temples carved from a sandstone cliff during the reign of Ramesses II, 13th century BC. Ramesses II rules Egypt during its most powerful period. He's building monuments across the kingdom. In Nubia, near the border with Sudan, he orders construction of 2 temples, but these won't be built. They'll be carved from the cliff face. The Great Temple features 4 massive seated statues of Ramesses. Each statue is over 60 feet tall, carved from the living rock of the mountain. These aren't separate sculptures. They're continuous with the cliff. The rock around them was removed, leaving the statues attached to the mountain. The statues flank the temple entrance. Behind them, The temple extends over 200 feet into the mountain. The interior consists of multiple halls, chambers carved with pillars, walls covered with carved hieroglyphs and scenes. At the rear of the temple, in the innermost sanctuary, sit 4 statues, Ramesses and 3 deities. Twice per year, on specific dates, sunlight penetrates the entire depth of the temple, illuminates the sanctuary statues. This occurs around February 21st and October 21st, near Ramesses' birthday and coronation day according to some interpretations. The precision required for this astronomical alignment is remarkable. The temple extends 200 feet into solid rock. The entrance angle, the hall dimensions, every measurement had to be calculated to achieve the alignment. 1 degree of error and the sunlight misses the sanctuary. The effect fails. This required advanced astronomy, mathematical calculations, surveying techniques that accurately predicted solar angles. The smaller temple next to the Great Temple is dedicated to Queen Nefertari. It features 6 statues on its facade, 4 of Ramesses and 2 of Nefertari. Each statue is 30 feet tall, all carved from the same cliff. Both temples were carved from sandstone, the same material as Petra, but the Egyptian work shows different techniques. The Egyptian style emphasizes smooth surfaces, clean lines, hieroglyphic precision. Every symbol carved into the walls required accuracy. Hieroglyphs followed strict conventions. Proportions were standardized. Carving them into living rock while maintaining these standards suggests trained craftsmen, artists who understood the writing system and its visual requirements. In the 1960s, a crisis emerged. The Aswan High Dam was under construction. Lake Nasser would flood Abu Simbel. UNESCO coordinated an international effort to save the temples. The solution was unprecedented. Cut the temples into blocks, move them, reassemble them on higher ground. The entire project took 5 years. Engineers carefully mapped every detail, cut the carved rock into manageable pieces, reconstructed the temples 200 feet higher. During this process, modern engineers gained insight into ancient construction. They measured, analyzed, documented. What they found impressed them. The precision of the carving, the structural integrity, the astronomical alignment. The temples had stood for over 3,000 years, carved from sandstone using Bronze Age tools, yet structurally sound, artistically intact. The astronomical alignment was reconstructed in the new location. The twice-yearly solar illumination still occurs, though the dates shifted by 1 day due to accumulated precession and calendar changes over 3 millennia. Abu Simbel demonstrates that ancient Egyptian engineers possessed sophisticated knowledge, astronomy, mathematics, structural engineering, knowledge that was applied to carving massive temples from solid rock, creating monuments that have survived millennia. The temples exist as proof. The precision is measurable. The achievement is undeniable. Number 6 takes us to Turkey, to an underground city carved from soft volcanic rock in Cappadocia, Derinkuyu, an 8-level underground complex that housed up to 20,000 people. The region of Cappadocia features unique geology. Volcanic eruptions deposited thick layers of soft tuff, easy to carve but structurally stable when properly engineered. Ancient peoples discovered they could excavate this material, create underground spaces, build entire settlements beneath the surface. Derinkuyu is the largest discovered so far, though archaeologists believe dozens more remain hidden. The city extends approximately 280 feet deep, 8 distinct levels carved downward into volcanic rock. Each level contains chambers, tunnels, ventilation shafts, storage rooms, living quarters. The city included everything needed for long-term occupation: wineries, oil presses, stables for animals, chapels, meeting halls. Most remarkably, the city had a sophisticated ventilation system, 52 ventilation shafts, some reaching all 8 levels. These shafts provided fresh air to the deepest chambers, a critical engineering requirement for underground habitation. The shafts were carved precisely to maximize airflow while minimizing vulnerability. They could be sealed from inside if necessary. The city also included a water system, wells that reached groundwater, distribution channels carved into the floors, drainage systems prevented flooding. Water was managed throughout the complex. The exact construction date remains debated. Some researchers suggest it began in the 8th century BC. Others claim earlier origins. What's clear is that the city was expanded and improved over centuries. Multiple civilizations used it, each adding or modifying. During the Byzantine era, Christian communities used Decoded as refuge, protection from Arab raids, a place to hide during invasions. The city could be sealed from inside. Large circular stone doors, rolling closure mechanisms that locked tunnels. These doors were genius engineering, heavy enough to block passage, but designed to be moved by one person from the inside. The city could house up to 20,000 people for extended periods, complete with food storage, water supply, waste management. Think about the engineering required. Ventilation for 20,000 people, water for 20,000 people, all underground, all carved from soft rock that required proper techniques to prevent collapse. The builders understood structural principles. They left pillars for support, carved arches to distribute weight, created stable chambers that have lasted millennia. Modern engineers studying the site are impressed by the sophistication. The ventilation system alone required advanced understanding of airflow. The water system shows knowledge of hydraulics. The structural elements demonstrate understanding of load distribution. This wasn't random excavation. This was systematic engineering, planned, calculated, executed, with precision. And Decoded isn't unique. Cappadocia contains dozens of underground cities. Kaymakli, Mazi, Ozkanak, all carved from volcanic rock. Some are connected by tunnels, underground passages linking separate city complexes. The scale suggests massive labor, generations of work, continuous occupation and expansion over centuries. The knowledge required suggests sophisticated understanding, not primitive cave digging. Advanced engineering applied to subterranean construction. Decoded was rediscovered in 1963. A local resident found a mysterious room behind a wall. Investigation revealed the massive complex. Today, it's a tourist site. Visitors can explore several levels, see the engineering firsthand. The chambers, the ventilation shafts, the stone doors, the water wells, all carved from solid rock. Evidence of capabilities that challenge assumptions about ancient engineering. Proof that complex systems could be created with pre-modern technology. The city exists. The engineering is measurable. The achievement is undeniable. Number 7 returns us to India, to another extraordinary example of rock-cut architecture from the 8th century. The Elephanta Caves. Rock-cut temples on Elephanta Island in Mumbai Harbor, 5th to 8th centuries AD. Multiple Hindu dynasties controlled the region. The temples were carved during this period. The island is small, about 10 square miles, but it contains elaborate cave temples carved from basalt rock. The main cave, Cave 1, is massive. A pillared hall, over 130 feet square, carved entirely from living rock. The hall contains rows of carved pillars. Each pillar is identical in size and proportion, all carved from continuous stone. The ceiling is carved with architectural details. The floor is level and smooth. The pillars create organized aisles. At the rear of the hall stands the masterpiece, the Trimurti, a 20-foot-tall, three-faced sculpture of Lord Shiva. The sculpture is carved from the same rock as the temple walls, not a separate piece, continuous with the mountain. The three faces represent different aspects of Shiva. Each face shows distinct expression, different artistic character. The level of detail is extraordinary. Jewelry, facial features, hair, crown, all carved from solid basalt. Basalt is one of the hardest stones, much harder than sandstone or limestone. Carving it requires exceptional tools and skill. Yet the Elephanta Caves show precision equal to softer stone temples. Smooth surfaces, clean edges, intricate details. The temple contains numerous smaller sculptures. scenes from Hindu mythology, Shiva, in various forms, narrative panels. Each sculpture is carved in relief. Figures emerge from the rock wall. Multiple depth layers create three-dimensional effects. The artistic skill suggests master sculptors, but the engineering required to create the space itself is equally impressive. The cave required removal of thousands of tons of basalt, all while maintaining structural integrity, preventing collapse, creating a functional space. The pillars aren't decorative, they're structural, supporting the carved ceiling, distributing the weight of the mountain above, yet they're also artistic, carved with decorative elements, proportioned aesthetically, serving both functional and visual purposes. The Portuguese colonizers found the caves in the 16th century. They used the island for military purposes. Some damage occurred to the sculptures, but the structural engineering remained intact. The caves showed no signs of collapse despite centuries of neglect. In 1987, UNESCO designated the caves a World Heritage Site, recognized their archaeological and artistic significance. Modern conservation efforts protect the temples, but the original engineering needs no reinforcement. It's still structurally sound after 13 centuries. Researchers studying the site try to understand the carving process. How did workers remove so much hard basalt? What tools did they use? Bronze tools would have dulled quickly on basalt. Iron tools were available, but still challenging. Stone tools would work, but slowly. Yet the precision suggests controlled, skillful work, not crude chiseling, planned removal of material. The caves demonstrate that ancient Indian craftsmen could work the hardest stones with precision, could create massive interior spaces, could combine structural engineering with high art. This knowledge existed, was applied, created monuments that survive today. The temples aren't theoretical. They're physical evidence, measurable, analyzable, undeniable. Ancient civilizations possessed engineering capabilities that modern people often underestimate. The Elephanta caves prove it. Carved from one of the hardest stones, structurally sound after 13 centuries, artistically remarkable. Evidence carved in basalt, permanent, undeniable, impressive even by modern standards. Number 8 takes us to China, to Buddhist cave temples carved during a golden age of religious art. The Longmen grottos. Thousands of Buddha statues and inscriptions carved into limestone cliffs along the Yi River. 5th to 10th centuries AD. Multiple Chinese dynasties sponsored the work, from Northern Wei through Tang Dynasty. The site contains over 2,300 caves and niches, more than 100,000 statues, 2,800 inscriptions, all carved directly from limestone cliffs along a mile-long stretch of river gorge. The largest cave, Fengxian Temple, contains a massive Buddha statue, 56 feet tall, carved from the cliff face during the Tang Dynasty. Emperor Gaozong sponsored the project. Empress Wu Zetian donated funds from her personal treasury. The statue shows remarkable artistry, serene expression, flowing robes, precise proportions, all carved from living rock. The Buddha is flanked by other figures, disciples, guardians, heavenly kings, creating a complete sculptural scene. Each figure is carved in detail, different expressions, different poses, individual character despite being part of a unified composition. But the artistic achievement, while impressive, isn't the only remarkable aspect. The engineering matters just as much. The Fengxian Temple is open air. The cliff face was carved away, creating a massive niche. The statues carved from remaining rock. This required removing enormous amounts of limestone, shaping the cliff face, creating a stable backdrop for the sculptures. One miscalculation, and critical statues could have been ruined. Too much material removed, and structural integrity fails. The smaller caves show even more intricate work. Some caves are tiny, single Buddha statues in small niches. Others are elaborate chapels, multiple chambers, carved pillars, decorative ceilings, entire temple spaces excavated from solid rock. The inscriptions are equally important. 2,800 separate texts carved into the stone. These include Buddhist scriptures, donor records, historical accounts, carved in Chinese characters with remarkable precision. The characters are uniform in size, arranged in neat columns, carved deeply enough to be clearly legible 13 centuries later. This level of precision in text carving requires literacy, artistic skill, understanding of written language conventions. The workers weren't just laborers. They were literate craftsmen, able to read, able to reproduce text accurately in stone. The project spanned 5 centuries, multiple dynasties, different religious emphases, different artistic styles. But the engineering knowledge remained consistent. The ability to carve limestone precisely, to create stable structures, to work at various scales. The Longmen grottos show institutional knowledge, training systems, master craftsmen teaching apprentices across generations. Not isolated achievements. Continuous tradition of technical skill maintained over 500 years. The site suffered damage during various periods: political upheaval, cultural revolution. Some statues were destroyed or defaced. Foreign collectors removed some Buddha heads, sold them to Western museums. This theft damaged but didn't destroy the overall complex. Today, the site is protected. UNESCO World Heritage status. Chinese government conservation efforts. But the original engineering needs no reinforcement. The caves remain stable, the cliff face intact, the carvings preserved. Modern laser scanning technology has documented the entire site, creating 3-dimensional digital records, allowing detailed analysis. These scans reveal the precision of the carving, the mathematical proportions, the consistency maintained across centuries. The Longmen grottos demonstrate sustained engineering capability, multiple generations working at the same site, maintaining consistent quality and structural integrity. This required education systems, knowledge transmission, institutional memory that preserved technical skills. Not every civilization maintained such continuity. Many lost technical knowledge during political transitions. Skills disappeared, capabilities declined. But Chinese craftsmen working at Longmen maintained their skills across 5 centuries through dynasty changes, through religious persecution, through political upheaval. The evidence is carved in limestone. Thousands of caves, tens of thousands of statues, millions of carved characters, physical proof of sustained technical excellence, engineering knowledge preserved and applied across generations. The grottos exist. The precision is measurable. The achievement spans 5 centuries. Number 9 brings us back to Ethiopia, to rock-cut churches that predate Lalibela but remain less famous. The Tigray churches. Over 120 rock-hewn churches carved into cliffsides and mountain peaks across the Tigray region. 4th to 15th centuries AD. Some churches date to the earliest Christian period in Ethiopia. Others are medieval. These churches are different from Lalibela. Most are carved into cliff faces, not excavated from ground level. Accessing them requires climbing. Some are hundreds of feet above ground, carved into vertical or near-vertical rock faces. Abuna Yamatagu is perhaps the most dramatic. Carved into a cliff face 800 feet above the valley floor. Reaching the church requires climbing the cliff. No roads, no stairs, just rock climbing, vertical ascent, exposure to deadly falls. The church itself sits in a natural cave that was modified and expanded. The interior is painted with murals, the walls carved with religious scenes. But here's the question: how did 4th or 5th century workers carve a church in that location? How did they transport tools 800 feet up a vertical cliff? How did they work while suspended on rock faces? How did they paint elaborate murals while clinging to precipices? How did they maintain artistic precision in such conditions? The church has been in continuous use for over 1,500 years. Priests climb to conduct services. Pilgrims make the dangerous ascent. People died reaching it. Falls, accidents. But the church remains an active place of worship. The carving itself shows precision. The interior space is carefully shaped. The walls are smoothed. The ceiling is carved with architectural details. This wasn't random excavation. This was planned construction, executed in one of the most challenging locations possible. Other Tigray churches are equally remarkable. Mariam Korkor is carved into a mountain peak. Daniel Korkor sits on a narrow ridge. Each church required extensive rock carving, creating interior spaces, shaping walls and ceilings, adding architectural details. Some churches have painted ceilings, elaborate frescoes covering carved rock surfaces, religious scenes, geometric patterns. The paints have survived for centuries, protected by the carved rock spaces, but exposed to temperature fluctuations, humidity changes. Yet they remain visible, colors still bright, details still clear, testimony to both artistic skill and material quality. The Tigray churches represent a different engineering challenge than Lalibela or Ellora. The accessibility problem is paramount. Creating large temples at ground level is difficult. Creating them on cliff faces hundreds of feet up is exponentially harder. Yet Ethiopian Christians accomplished it, created over 120 churches, many in seemingly impossible locations. The motivation was religious, creating sacred spaces separated from the world, places requiring devotion to reach. But the execution required engineering, understanding of rock properties, climbing techniques, tool transport, work coordination. The knowledge required suggests sophisticated technical culture, not just religious devotion. Practical engineering applied in extreme conditions. Many Tigray churches remain active, used for worship, maintained by local communities, part of living religious tradition. Others are abandoned, too difficult to access regularly, preserved by isolation, waiting for researchers to document them. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church protects these sites, but many are remote. Documentation is incomplete. Full archaeological study ongoing. What's clear is this: Ethiopian rock-hewn architecture represents one of the most challenging applications of the technique. Not just carving downward into accessible bedrock, but carving into vertical cliffs, working hundreds of feet above ground, creating spaces in seemingly impossible locations. The churches exist. The carving is measurable. The achievement is undeniable. Ancient Ethiopian engineers possessed capabilities that challenge modern assumptions, created monuments that still inspire awe. Physical evidence carved into mountains, permanent, undeniable, remarkable. Number 10 takes us back to India one final time, to the largest rock-cut monastery complex in the country, the Karla Caves. Buddhist rock-cut caves carved during the 2nd century BC to 5th century AD. Located in Maharashtra, about 60 miles from Mumbai, carved into a hillside along an ancient trade route. The Great Chaitya at Karla is the largest rock-cut prayer hall in India, 124 feet long, 45 feet tall. The hall is carved in the shape of a basilica, a central nave with side aisles. Carved pillars separate the spaces. At the rear of the hall stands a stupa, a dome-shaped Buddhist monument, carved from the same rock as the hall itself. The ceiling is carved in a barrel vault shape, the curve precisely calculated, the structure perfectly stable. Wooden ribs were once attached to the ceiling, decorative elements that enhanced the architectural effect. Most have been lost to time, but the stone structure remains intact, 22 centuries after carving, structurally sound, architecturally impressive. The entrance features elaborate carved facades, horseshoe-shaped windows, decorative columns, sculptures of donors and supporters. These facades show the donors who funded the cave's construction: merchants, traders, their families. Immortalized in stone, the inscriptions identify them, describe their contributions, provide historical evidence of the cave's construction. The pillars inside the hall are remarkable. 37 carved columns, each over 40 feet tall, all carved from continuous rock. The pillars feature carved capitals, elephants, horses, human figures. Each capital is unique, individually artistic, but they're not separate sculptures. They're part of the pillars, carved from the same stone, continuous with the floor and ceiling. The precision required to carve these pillars while maintaining structural integrity is extraordinary. Each pillar supports the ceiling, bears the weight of the mountain above. Remove too much material, and the pillar weakens. Structural failure, collapse, disaster. Yet the pillars are carved with elaborate details, decorative elements that remove material, create artistic effect, while maintaining strength. This required understanding of structural engineering, material properties, load calculations, distributed weight. The hall has acoustic properties. Sound carries clearly from front to rear. Chanting resonates, creates immersive auditory experience. This wasn't accidental. The dimensions were calculated to create these effects. The shape enhances sound. The materials amplify resonance. Ancient acoustical engineering, applied to rock-cut architecture, creating spaces optimized for religious ceremony. The Karla caves were occupied continuously for centuries. Buddhist monks lived there, studied, practiced, maintained the complex. As Buddhism declined in India, the caves were gradually abandoned, but local communities preserved them, recognized their significance. British colonial archaeologists documented the caves in the 19th century, recognized their architectural importance. Today they're protected monuments, managed by the Archaeological Survey of India, open to visitors. The Great Chaitya remains the centerpiece, the largest rock-cut prayer hall, a testament to ancient engineering capabilities. 22 centuries old, carved from solid rock, structurally intact, acoustically impressive, artistically remarkable. The Karla caves represent the culmination of rock-cut architecture techniques, combining scale, precision, artistry, and engineering. Not primitive carving, sophisticated architecture, advanced engineering, applied to one of the most challenging construction methods possible. The evidence exists in stone, measurable, analyzable, undeniable. Ancient civilizations possessed capabilities that modern people often underestimate. Knowledge that was applied, skills that were perfected, achievements that endure. The Karla caves prove it. Carved from mountains, lasting millennia, impressive by any standard. 10 temples carved from single rocks. 10 monuments that challenge conventional understanding of ancient engineering capabilities. From India to Ethiopia, from Egypt to China, from Jordan to Turkey. The pattern repeats. Ancient civilizations carved elaborate structures directly from living rock, not built with blocks, not assembled from pieces, carved downward or inward from solid stone. The Kailasa temple with 400,000 tons of rock removed. Lalibela with 11 churches carved from volcanic bedrock. Abu Simbel with its astronomical alignments calculated into 200 feet of carved sandstone. Each structure represents engineering knowledge that mainstream history barely acknowledges. Mathematical precision, structural calculations, organizational sophistication. These weren't primitive people with crude tools stumbling toward achievement. These were skilled engineers applying advanced knowledge that was somehow developed, maintained, transmitted across generations, applied consistently over centuries. The evidence is carved in stone, literally permanent, impossible to dismiss or ignore. Modern engineers who study these sites often admit they couldn't guarantee success using the same methods. The risk is too high. One error ruins everything. Yet ancient engineers succeeded, created stable structures that have lasted millennia, maintained precision despite working with irreversible processes. This suggests confidence, based on knowledge, on understanding, on proven techniques refined across generations. The mainstream narrative claims ancient peoples worked through trial and error, slowly developing skills, making mistakes, learning gradually. But monolithic rock-cut architecture doesn't allow for mistakes. You can't trial and error your way through carving a temple from a mountain. One structural miscalculation and the entire project collapses. Centuries of work destroyed. No way to repair. No way to start over. Yet they succeeded. Repeatedly. across continents, across cultures, across centuries. Different civilizations, different religions, different time periods, but similar engineering challenges, similar solutions, similar success. This suggests universal knowledge, engineering principles that different cultures discovered or shared, applied to local materials and conditions. The temples exist today, still standing, still structurally sound, some still in active use after millennia. Physical proof that ancient engineering was more advanced than textbooks suggest, that human capability is older than accepted timelines acknowledge. The question isn't whether these achievements occurred. The temples are measurable, documented, photographed. The question is why mainstream understanding of ancient capabilities remains so limited, why evidence of advanced engineering is downplayed or explained away. These structures suggest civilizations that possessed sophisticated knowledge, mathematical understanding, engineering expertise, organizational capacity, capabilities that challenge the narrative of gradual human progress, of primitive ancestors slowly developing toward modern sophistication. The rock-cut temples prove otherwise, show that advanced knowledge existed thousands of years ago, was applied successfully, created monuments that endure. The evidence carved in stone is patient, waiting for acknowledgement, waiting for understanding to catch up with physical reality. Each temple represents knowledge that was real, skills that were taught, systems that worked, achievements that succeeded, not mythology, not exaggeration, physical evidence that anyone can visit, see, measure, analyze. The temples remain. The precision is undeniable. The engineering is impressive. The implications are clear. Human history is more complex than simplified narratives suggest. Ancient capabilities were greater than mainstream assumptions acknowledge. The stone doesn't lie. The carvings remain. The evidence exists. What we believe about ancient engineering says more about our assumptions than about ancient reality. The temples prove one thing conclusively. Our ancestors were more capable than we give them credit for. The only question is what else they achieved that we haven't yet discovered or haven't yet been willing to acknowledge. The evidence is carved in mountains, permanent, patient, waiting for understanding to evolve. Human capability is ancient. Human achievement is remarkable. Human knowledge is deeper than we remember. The rock-cut temples prove it, one carved mountain at a time.